And here is what our psalmist writes. Please listen, O shepherd of Israel, you who led Joseph's descendants like a flock, O God enthroned above the cherubim, display your radiant glory to Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Show us your mighty power. Come to rescue us. Turn us again to yourself, O God. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. O Lord God of heaven's armies, how long will you be angry with your prayers, with our prayers? You have fed us with sorrow and made us drink tears by the bucketful. You have made us the scorn of neighboring nations. Our enemies treat us as a joke. Turn us again to yourself, O God of heaven's armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. You brought us from Egypt like a grapevine. You drove away the pagan nations and transplanted us into your land. You cleared the ground for us, and we took root and filled the land. Our shade covered the mountains. Our branches covered the mighty cedars. We spread our branches west to the Mediterranean Sea. Our shoots spread east to the Euphrates River. But now, why have you broken down our walls so that all who pass by may steal our fruit? The wild boar from the forest devours it, and the wild animals feed on it. Come back, we beg you, O God of heaven's army. Look down from heaven and see our plight. Take care of this grapevine that you yourself have planted, the son that you have raised for yourself, for we are chopped up and burned by our enemies. May they perish at the sight of your frown. Strengthen the man you love, the son of your choice. Then we will never abandon you again. Revive us so we can call on your name once more. Turn us again to yourself, O Lord God of heaven's armies. Make your face shine down upon us. Only then will we be saved. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Made you stand for a whole chapter, a whole psalm. You can complain to your friends at other churches. But what a passage of just honesty, of lament that we have there, of just this kind of pain and confusion. You can just feel it in the words. I mean, there's poetic words. I think some of us, if we were to say them ourselves, we would feel uncomfortable and say, should I really be saying this to God? The psalmist, though, is just honest. What if the church, your local church, not the building, but the people of God's church, here at Rock Island First, what if we were known not as necessarily the happiest place on earth or the happiest bunch, or we're not necessarily the people that have everything put together, but we were the most honest people? That it was safe to be yourself. That it was okay to be honest with things that are going on in your life. I feel like that's what we see in a psalm like this. And it reminds me of just that repetition and that request of the psalmist. In 1983, songwriter Jim Steinman gave the world these words. Every now and then I get a little bit lonely and you're never coming around. Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit tired of listening to the sound of my tears. Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit nervous that the best of all the years have gone by. Turn around. Every now and then I get a little bit terrified, and then I see the look in your eyes. Turn around. Every now and then I fall apart. Now, those of you that know that Bonnie Taylor made those words popular in her song, Total Eclipse of the Heart, and it almost seemed to me like they're ripped from Psalm 80. Because the psalmist says, turn around, just like Bonnie Taylor did. 3 times the psalmist says, turn us again to you, O Lord. Now, we typically don't like the vulnerability of the honesty that begs someone to turn around and take notice of us. We usually think we're too self-sufficient, like, if you don't want me, then I don't need you either. But the psalmist and even Bonnie Taylor in the song, they're saying, turn around, see me, recognize me, pay attention to me is what it's saying. Did you ever do that when you were a kid? Come to your parents and be like, Mom, Dad, you know, surely no one in here, maybe just me or my kids, but that's kind of what's going on. It's the adult version of that. As adults, we're taught to be self-sufficient and not need to do that. But here is the psalmist saying, turn around. Turn us again. Help us. We don't know what's going on, or maybe we do, and that's the problem. Because it's one thing to sing along with a popular 80s song, chalking it up to just a good song, but it's entirely something else to be honest in our despair that God would rescue us. It's tough to be honest about how it feels because we don't want to complain and we don't want to become a pessimist. We don't want to seem like someone that's always saying, like, God, can you straighten everybody else up? Although sometimes we might think that in our head. Unfortunately, though, I think the reality of it is that when we deny the reality of our experience out of the fear of wallowing in darkness, we create an artificial view of life or a saccharine view of life. You know what saccharine is? Anybody remember what saccharine is? Artificial sweetener, sweet and low, any of those things, right? It's artificial, right? And so sometimes we do that, don't we? We say, oh, everything's fine. We're just sprinkling on the sweet and low. And so if we're not honest, and I get that, you don't want to walk around and be Eeyore all the time, but I think sometimes in the fear of that, we run and we just put too much sweetener on everything. But collectively, when we want everything to be sweet, when we want everything to be nice, we become unable to tolerate, let alone embrace, anyone who is brave enough to admit that things aren't perfect. You know? It's like, whoa, there's nothing wrong here. What are you talking about? Everything is great. And so if we aren't honest to say, yeah, I can understand that. And so if we aren't willing to lament, to honestly speak to God about disappointment and about pain and about frustration, then we are gaslighting ourselves and others. Anybody ever heard that term, gaslighting? A few of us, yeah. Gaslighting is the idea that one person turns down the gas on gas-powered lights. Do you remember? Anybody old enough to remember gas-powered lights? All right, I was going to see who was going to admit it. We got a couple. I see somebody else raising somebody else's hand too. But what the idea here, where that saying comes from, is the idea that you're turning down the gas on the lights and it's getting darker, and someone's sitting there saying, "Hey, is it getting darker?" And you're saying, "No, it must just be you." And then you turn down the gas a little lower and the lights go down a little more and they're saying, "Isn't it getting dark in here?" And they're saying, "You're crazy. There must be something wrong with you." That's what gaslighting in its technical truest term is. It says, "There must be something wrong with you because it looks fine to me." It's the idea that you start to convince someone they must be crazy or they can't trust their feelings, they can't trust their eyes. Another example of this is someone denying the reality for someone else, convincing them they are alone in what they're experiencing. Here's a little cartoon that kind of puts it together. It's someone holding up a banana saying, "This is not a banana." What are you talking about? This isn't a banana. That would be gaslighting. Or to say, "I'm not a banana." Giant banana right there. Or if someone says, "Hey, what's going on with these bananas?" You start saying, "There's no bananas. What are you talking about? Who said anything about bananas?" It's this idea to create distrust in someone else. So being able to lament is the idea that we can be honest instead of gaslighting ourselves to keep gaslighting from taking place. And when we're able to admit the reality of that there are parts of our life that are less than ideal, we are then able to embrace other people and love them for who they are and give them comfort to say, "I know what you're going through because I'm here too. I'm not perfect. My life isn't perfect." But when we're able to be honest about the imperfections, about the less than parts of our life, then we are able to fully engage in the hope of Jesus Christ. To say, just like our series we did last month, to say, my life isn't perfect yet. The way that we connect to people, the way that we love other people, a lot of times is by saying, "I'm with you in this. I know what you're going through." Even if I'm not going through the exact same thing, as to say, "I know it stinks." And so this passage, when it says, "Turn us around, O God," is a recognition of the reality that there needs to be a drastic change in the position and the posture of God's people. Because they don't say, "God, please turn around." They're saying, "God, turn us around." Kind of give us a kick in the pants. Spin us around to where we need to be facing. Other translations say, "Restore us, O God." That may help us to imagine even more what they're saying here. There's a plea in the recognition that God is responsible and necessary for any hope the author has in being restored. We see this. "Turn us again, O Lord. Make your face shine upon us. Only then will we be saved." There's versions of it 3 different times throughout that passage. Verse 3, verse 7, and verse 19. The admission of this, the writing for this is an acknowledgement that there is a need for God. And right after that need for God, please turn us around or what's the word? I keep wanting to say revive, restore. That's it. Restore us again. This plea to restore us again is followed by the hope for a blessing instead of the darkness we're currently experiencing. Make your face shine upon us. Does anybody recognize that language? It's from the blessing. If Kathy were here, this is Kathy's Sunday, and Kathy's not here. I feel so disappointed. Kathy Calhoun loves to pray the prayer, the Aaronic prayer that says, make your face shine upon us. It's this blessing. May the Lord's peace go with you. And it's in the Old Testament. And so this plea from the author of the psalm is to say, God, help us turn around. Make your blessing come upon us again. We need to see your face. Only then, and only then will we be saved. There's an election coming up, next year? Don't worry, I'm not going to talk politics. You probably wouldn't like it if I did anyway, because I just want everybody to think that. I had a pastor once say, I want both sides to think that I'm with them. And I say, it's funny because I'm always the person that wants to offer the other opinion, so I think both sides think I'm against them. So either way, I think it's okay as a pastor. But there's an election coming this year. I think we need to remember this. Only then will we be saved when the Lord turns us so our face may shine upon us. Not as a nation, because a lot of times we say, God, fix this nation. But you know what makes up the nation? Individual people. And so when we get in our head that there's not going to be a perfect elephant or a perfect donkey that's going to come in and make us saved and save us from the reality of whatever we're experiencing, but instead it's only going to be by God. And I get running the country is different than our salvation, but one's a lot more important than the other. And so let us remember that what God wants to save isn't a country, isn't an economy, isn't this thing or that thing. It's individuals that make up his church, individuals that make up his creation. All this other stuff that we care about, they can be tools, and I get they're not bad necessarily, although they sure look bad a lot of different times. The idea is that only then will we be saved when we are turned towards God and his face is shining upon us. It is through the blessing of God that we have hope, not in our perfect person getting in the office and making things all better, because they're not going to do as much as they promise, not because we're going to find the right person to go with us through life, not because we're going to get the right job or anything else, but because God has a plan of rescue and redemption and involves us in his story. This is the key idea for Advent, though. This longing for things to be different, this longing for time to speed up, this cry for God to his people. Let me start again. This cry to God from his people is what the heart of Advent is. It's this waiting, this admission that things are not great, that it seems like the darkness is closing in and saying, God, we need some light here. Can you help us out? In Isaiah 64:1, Evie read it for us. It said, oh God, that you would burst from the heavens and come down. Other translation says, if only you would tear the heavens open and come down. It's a prayer, a request. God, come and change this. Come and shake it up. Because we know what will happen if God comes. It's not like, did you ever say, well, wait till your parent gets home? Wait till your dad gets home. Wait till your mom gets home. And that was like, oh, that's when things get serious. For the psalmist, I think it's or in Isaiah, it's a little bit of a writing to say, God, come down and take care of all these other people. The psalmist is a little more, God, come down and take care of us. But we know that God's going to shake things up. We know that God doesn't just leave situations how they are. And so one of the closest things that I think we can relate this to would be Christmas Eve, especially as a kid. Because it's not just the calendar that makes Christmas Eve saturated in eager anticipation of what will be. It's an overabundance of excitement for the future reality of the next morning. You know what's coming, and so you're super excited, especially as a kid on Christmas Eve. Then when you have kids, you can get excited again because they're going to get up, hopefully not super early. And then I assume as grandparents, I don't know, maybe I haven't experienced that yet, but maybe you get that excited too because, hey, they get to come over and see all this stuff. But there's an expectation of what you know is going to happen in the morning. There's an excited tension there that says, oh, if only you could speed up. If only I could fast forward, right? The silly thing is kids stay up late. And I'm like, go to bed and you'll wake up and I'll be here a lot faster than you staying up. Anyway, that's beside the point. But there's an overabundance of anxious waiting for what you know is going to be in the morning. Even if you don't know what all the gifts are, you know there's going to be gifts. Even if you don't know what it's all going to look like, you know it's going to be good. Because you're spending time with family, because you're in this happy moment. Sometimes people think you're just being optimistic to hold out hope. But the optimist is just a person that says, you know what? I really hope this best case scenario works out. That's an optimist. Just saying, well, as many bad things that could happen, there could be good things that happen. That's not what we're talking about here. Because the optimist just hopes for the best of many possibilities to happen. The people of God have hope that is born and forged in the experiences that have taught them of God's ability and faithfulness before. And so it gives us this bankable hope. That's a hope that we can just count on for a future reality that God has promised, all because of his resume in the past. And so when we read Scripture, a lot of times what we're doing is reading the resume of the story of God about how he makes a way. Stephanie sang the song about all the things he can do. He can turn bones into armies, right? He can turn graves into gardens. He is a difference maker. And his resume has proven himself again and again. And so our hope is not just, we hope this best chance scenario. Our hope is founded in, I hope what he promised comes soon. Because it's really dark right now. When I start that climb on the I-74 bridge across the Mississippi from Moline, it's not simply optimism that the bridge will hold me in my car. I can actually bank on that hope, or at least I better, otherwise I should turn off of it. I know some of us are not keen on going across that bridge. I think it's fantastic. And the fact that there are less people on it because they're afraid of it, well, then that helps me go faster. So thank you. But I can bank with the hope of the idea that there's a future reality of me making it to the other side in Bettendorf because of the bridge's resume to this point of holding plenty of cars and semis and other things to that point. And so the resume of the past gives me not just hope. I'm not being optimistic to saying, oh, I hope this bridge holds. I don't even think about it, honestly, because its resume has proven it to have no problems. The psalmist writes about God's resume in verses 8 and 11 through 11 of our passage. He says, you brought us up from Egypt like a grapevine. You drove away the pagan nations and transplanted us into your land. I'm getting out of breath, so I must be talking fast. Am I talking fast? All right, you all would, I see some yeses. Okay. I'm getting excited. It says, you cleared the ground for us, and we took root and filled the land. Our shade covered the mountains. Our branches covered the mighty cedars. We spread our branches west to the Mediterranean Sea. Our shoots spread east to the Euphrates River. That's the resume of God. They're saying, you have done all of this before. You built us up. You rescued us. You planted us. You made us big and great, as if God needed a reminder. They're saying it. But then the writer says in verse 12, but now why have you broken down our wall so that all who pass by may steal our fruit? Basically, the writer is saying, you did all of this building up, all of this making a way for us, just to destroy us now? What was the point? And so there's this honesty, a little bit of a pretty direct honesty with God, to saying, you did all this, why are you doing this now? Did you bring us this far just to get here and leave us alone? That's what he's saying. Have you ever felt like that? Like you're saying, God, I've been through so much. I've made it this far in my life. I've gotten here and now it seems to be falling apart. Like, did you do all that just to leave me here now? Man, it's okay. God's shoulders can take lament and honesty like that we have feelings that don't necessarily define reality, but can be the reality of how we're feeling at that time. One commentator said this about this passage. He said, in its most desperate moment, Israel appears to Yahweh, completely confident of a good future from Yahweh, if only Yahweh can be moved to action. And I'm confident that you can make things better If only, if only you will move. If only you will act. God, please act, is what we see in this passage. The people of Israel are at a pivotal point. Their faith is being called into question, if by no one else than themselves. I think that's what honest lament is. It's holding reality in one hand and speaking about the confusion and the pain to God, to saying, this is not where I thought I would be. God, what's going on? God, help me. God, rescue me. God, make your face shine upon us again. So holding in one hand this lament, this honesty of less than, and at the same time holding on to faith and hope in God on the other hand, making sure we don't give up on a God that has already done so much. We can hold both of those things and still be okay. Do we understand that? It's okay to say, God, I need help. God, this is painful. This is hard. At the same time, God, what other hope do I have but you? There's an eager anticipation at the same time as bitter disappointment. We don't like that, do we? I mean, think about it. When there's bitter disappointment, what do we want to do? We want to go and distract ourselves. Well, back when I was starting to Uber a couple months ago, I picked up a group of people at a Davenport. I'm running my words together. Not enough coffee, that's what it'll do. I went and picked up a group of people down at a Davenport bar. And I opened the doors, they all pile in, and we're driving to LeClaire. And they're young, and they're a little rowdy, and I really don't care. I don't have a lot of rules when I drive people other than don't throw up in my car. That's probably like the number one rule. Other than, there's some other rules, obviously, that are just part of being a human being, but those are like, that's probably my normal like driving rule. And halfway, they plugged in their music and they turned it up really loud, and I thought, this is interesting. Anyway, driving there, and at one point, in all the singing and all the celebrating, this girl begins to cry. And she said, I don't want to go to jail tomorrow. And the other person said, let's not worry about that right now. That'll take care of tomorrow. Let's just have fun. And so a lot of times what happens is we don't like the discomfort of something like jail, and I don't know, some of you might have experienced that, some of you might. There's other things, though, that might seem like jail, or might seem like prison, or might just seem like a difficult situation, or just even the disappointment and the pain of right now, and we want to exit it as fast as we can. But what Advent invites us into is this idea of holding on to the disappointment while holding on to hope at the same time. And sitting with people that might have an open chair at their table at Christmas. And saying, man, it's disappointing. Man, it's hard. But I have great hope because of Jesus. Not only for me, but for them. That they are not experiencing the disappointment that I am now. And so we can hold on to bitterness while holding on to hope at the same time and being okay. And realizing that's the reality of life. We can be honest enough to say that. Flashback to that song by Bonnie Taylor, and she says, once upon a time, I was falling in love, now I'm only falling apart. There's nothing I can do, a total eclipse of the heart. Once upon a time, there was light in my life, but now there's only love in the dark. Nothing I can say, a total eclipse of the heart. I think Bonnie Taylor would have been a good psalmist. These words speak to a felt reality. But I think the thing that we see in her words is that she has to languish without ever knowing if it will change, right? The cry of every longing heart, though, for the people of God is a cry to be rescued, to be saved, and there is honest lament waiting in that. Say, the cry of my heart is to be rescued. The difference for God's people is that we know things will change because we know the future will be different. And what we're in right now isn't the whole story, it's just a chapter. And one day the page will turn and our story will be joined to God's, and at the end we know it'll be different. Why? Because God has promised it to be so, and He has proven Himself faithful to this point. Psalm 130, verses 5 through 7 read this way: I am counting on the Lord. Yes, I am counting on Him. I have put my hope in His word. I long for the Lord more than centuries long for the dawn. Yes, more than the centuries long for the dawn. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is unfailing love. His redemption overflows. God's people might feel alone, and they might even feel ignored as we read in this psalm, but they have real hope that it isn't the end, that the current circumstance isn't the forever circumstance. There are people that you will meet every day who don't have that hope. They say, it's been this way forever, and it's probably going to be that way forever. But the people of God have hope that what they are experiencing right here and right now will not go on forever. Why? Because of Jesus Christ. And He is making all things new. And so that empty chair at the Christmas table will one day be a person that we get to join on the other side of this life as we can enjoy part 2. They and you and I all know that God will be present with us. He is Emmanuel, God with us. We will be freed from sin and we will be saved. God's people know this. But I often need reminded that this is the case. The God who created is the God who judges. The God who judges is the God who will save. It is the God, this shepherd whom Israel trusts in every season of life. The question we answer with our life is, do we? Do we only trust Him when things are going well? Or do we only trust Him when things are going bad? I get that when things are tough, our prayer life infinitely increases usually. What if it didn't? What if it was already at a high level? Wouldn't that be awesome? That kind of reminds me of a story of one of my favorite Christmas movies when I was growing up called A Christmas Story. And if you know this, either way, I guess I'm going to tell you about it. There's a guy named Ralphie. And Ralphie wants a Red Ryder carbine action 200-shot range model air rifle with a compass in the stock. That's what he wants, right? If you've seen the movie, you know he's obsessed with this thing. All he wants is to be this guy. He has all these dreams and all this stuff about it. He spends the whole movie trying to figure out how he's going to get this air rifle, all while his mom keeps telling him what? You'll shoot your eye out. Man, if there is a bigger, no fun version of mom, it's that in that movie. I haven't seen it, other than maybe there are times my own mom was that way. Love you, Mom, if you're watching. But that's how mom's job is sometimes, right? To be the no fun police, to say, hey, we're not doing that. Right? And Ralphie's mom is on it. You know, she gets to a school teacher. She gets to Santa even. If you've seen the movie, she's got, they all know you're going to shoot your eye out. Christmas Day comes, though, and he opens all of his gifts. And what does he find? No Red Ryder carbine action 200-shot range model air rifle with a compass in the stock. Not even one without a compass. Not even a 100-shot. Just no gun. And so as the family sits there on the couch and reflects, Ralphie's dad tells him to check behind the desk against the wall. Ralphie does, and if you've seen it, sure enough, there is the Red Ryder BB gun that he's been dreaming of. He's so excited, isn't he? He just can't believe it. It happened. He got his gun, he got his BB gun. He goes out to shoot, and after a few times, a ricochet hits him in the eye. He's dumbfounded. His mom was right. In that moment, Ralphie could have just pretended that nothing was wrong. He could have sucked it up and moved on, hoping no one found out that he shot his eye out. I mean, his eye doesn't pop out. Just, a little spoiler there if you haven't seen it. But He's sure he'd be in trouble because he did the exact thing that she said not to do. I think, though, that's how many of us would act. Because our lives have indicated that's how we act with things. God says, don't do that. You're going to shoot your eye out. And what do? We go and shoot our eye out. And then we're so surprised. Aren't we? It's possible that you and I would have sat there with a Red Ryder gun and asked, someone came by and said, how are you doing? It would have been great. Everything's fine. Don't look at my eye. I think what's interesting in this story, and I think it's funny, that's the point of it, is that Ralphie has a decision to make, and he heads inside, deciding to take his chances with his mom. The person that had been telling him all along, don't do it, you're going to shoot your eye out, and he's thinking, no, Mom, you're crazy, I know what I'm doing, I'm an expert, I'm going to be Ralphie, and you're going to love it, and all this kind of stuff. And he goes and he faces the person all along that says, don't do it. And the question he has to be walking with, I'm sure when he walks in, is she going to say, I told you so? Being honest is risky, right? It's risky. It's vulnerable sometimes when you're honest. To say, I don't have everything put together right. Not everything is perfect in my life or with this or with that. But Ralphie's mom doesn't say, I told you so. She doesn't say, I can't believe you did that. Instead, she rushes in to his rescue. It says, oh, Ralphie, sit down and anyway. Many times, God's people aren't honest enough because we're afraid we're going to be reprimanded by God, or worse yet. But a key point of the gospel is this, that we are both fully known and we are fully loved by God. We are fully known in all the things that the times we shot our eye out, and we're not any less loved because of it. We are still fully loved and invited to come and join our lives to Him. That's great truth today. We don't need to be dishonest. We don't need to run and hide the areas of our life that aren't perfect from God. We don't need to pretend that everything is just fine. God's okay with our honesty about the pain and the scars that we have. God is okay with our grief, our loss, and our trauma. In fact, it is our honesty as we lament to God about what isn't right yet that we are led to our hope in God. But do we need God if everything's fine? No, right? If we put saccharin on everything, saying, oh God, there's nothing to see here, everything's fine, everything's sweet, we might think we don't need God. But in our honesty about where we need Him, then that leads to our need for Him. You that answered, yes, we still need Him, you're right, but that's not the point I was making. I don't want you to leave and think I told you were wrong. You're not. But it's in our honesty about the reality of the less than parts of our life that invite God in to give us hope. Our hope is in God's ability to shine light in our darkness, to bring hope where it feels hopeless, and remind us of a future reality where the page has been turned and God has made all things new. It's coming one day. It's not here yet, but we wait in eager anticipation like a kid on Christmas Eve for the next morning when the light comes. Life isn't always easy, but God is always good. Both things can be true at the same time. So when we're feeling like our world is falling apart, or like every day the future is going to be the same as the days in the past, we can lament to God. We can be honest. We can do this in the confidence that He hears us in our pain and with the hope that He will come again. That's the tension in the reality of Advent. Let's not rush through it. Let's not just muddle through it like the song says. Instead, let's lean into being turned around and being blessed when God's face shines upon us once again. He is able, and He is coming again. Remember that in the days ahead. Remember that today, tomorrow, the weeks and the years ahead, that God is able and He's coming again. Will you stand with me?